Hello students, welcome back to my class. Today I will continue with Macbeth. Earlier I have talked about the role of Lady Macbeth in Shakespeare's Macbeth, and today I will discuss another very important scene, which is the banquet scene. The Act 3, Scene 5, Scene 4 in the drama Macbeth by Shakespeare. This part is for BA English Honours Part 2 students, and this is in paper 3. So let us move to our discussion. No great dramatist like Shakespeare creates an incident or scene without any specific purpose. Almost all the scenes, if you follow in Macbeth, has their own purpose, and especially this banquet scene where Macbeth has actually witnessed the ghost of Banquet, his friend, whom he has killed, whom he has ordered to kill, reappears. Okay, so I'll go into the detail of the scene in the course of my talk. So let us concentrate what this particular scene is all about. In Macbeth, the banquet scene, Act 3, Scene 4, is dramatically appropriate as it reveals the mind of Macbeth as well as the retributive justice in action. Here, Shakespeare introduced the ghost of Banquet, and by which the real thoughts and real ideas of Macbeth is partly exposed to the other characters of the play. So the background, we need to know about the background. Those who have not read Macbeth, do read Macbeth, and those who have already read, you people know that after killing Duncan, Macbeth could not sleep because he had that kind of guilt-ridden conscience. The sleepless torture is nothing but a sense of insecurity and fear. He thinks that if he were only safe, his insomnia would vanish. Insomnia means the sleeping disorder, those who cannot sleep at night. There is a fever in his blood which urges him to commit careless action in search for peace. He was searching for peace. Soon, Macbeth discovers the cause. He was searching, why can't I sleep? And soon came to know about that the cause of his sleepless nights is Banquet. Those who have not read Shakespeare's Macbeth, let me tell you something. Banquet and Macbeth were two good friends. They used to fight for the King Duncan, the King of Scotland. They are the two majors of King Duncan. So what happened while they were coming back after a battle, they have encountered with three witches. Those witches had made three prophecies. One is Macbeth will become the Thane of Cawdor, and then Macbeth will become the king, and last but not the least, Banquet will not become the king, but his sons and grandsons will become the king. So, after killing Duncan, Macbeth, when secured his place as the King of Scotland, he was worrying about Banquet, his friend. He thought, according to the witch's prophecy, Banquet and his sons will become the ruler of Scotland after Macbeth. So he wanted to eliminate Banquet and his son Fleance. Okay. So that is why he had that kind of sleepless night. So he tells to himself that the fear will only abolish, the tension will only abolish if he managed to kill Banquo. So the deed is done, but instead of the peace descending on him, his half-murdered conscience rises. His crime confronts him in the apparitions of Banquo's ghost, and the horror he faced, which happened in the night of the regicide, the killing of Duncan, returns. In Act 3, Scene 4, a banquet is prepared which reflects the iconography and ceremonial of Tudor order. So, Macbeth has become the king after killing Duncan. There is no trace of Banquo because Banquo was ordered to be killed. So, Macbeth has got hold of his kingdom. So, he has arranged for a party, the banquet. So, the description of the banquet reflects the iconography and ceremonial of the Tudor order. The banquet in Macbeth is perhaps organized to satisfy two purposes. Number one, to celebrate the spirit of harmony in the coronation function of the new king Macbeth. And the other one, which is more important to Macbeth, is to extract the virtues of bond and trust and loyalty from the subjects, to establish himself as a very good king. Okay, so in the banquet scene, we can find that the guests are assembled at the banquet hall of the palace. In the meantime, the first murderer who was employed to kill Banquo comes at the door. To his utter dismay, Macbeth learns that the client has escaped from the hand of the murderer, though Banquo was successfully killed. Eventually, Macbeth's fear returns. Macbeth was very much fearful because he knew that according to the witch's prophecy, the danger is from Macbeth's son, Banquo's son, not from Banquo. Banquo's son will become the king of Scotland. This particular prophecy was uttered by the witches. Okay, but the murderer who was sent to kill Banquo has successfully killed Banquo but could not kill Fleance, the son of Banquo. So Macbeth was very much terrified to listen the news. So having dismissed the murderer, Macbeth enters the hall and is about to take his seat. When he is about to take his seat, Banquo's ghost comes and takes his place. This particular vision upset Macbeth terribly. Forgetting the situation, he indulged into an emotional outburst which is unintelligible to the guest because the guest could not see the ghost. Okay. No other person in the hall, including Lady Macbeth, could not see the ghost of Banquo. But the only person who was seeing the ghost was Macbeth himself. Okay. So, Lady Macbeth rises to the occasion and asks all the other guests to take their seats. And he thinks that this particular feat of Macbeth is momentarily and he will again be very well. He tries to stimulate courage into her husband, but the ghost proved too much for him. It disappears for a time and Macbeth at once recovers his composure to lose it again with the reappearance of the ghost. So Macbeth is the person who can see Banquo's ghost again and again. Right. Lady Macbeth once again tries her best to restore normalcy to the situation, but the strain it involves leaves her totally exhausted. Macbeth was totally exhausted mentally, not physically, mentally. The banquet ends as she dismisses the guest hastily. After their departure, Macbeth continues to talk abnormally, which is instances of revealing of his guilt. So Macbeth was facing the guilt of killing the king Duncan and also killing his best friend Banquet. So even she says, I am in blood, stripped in so far that should I wed no more. Returning were as tedious as goes over. So these are the speeches by Macbeth which is available in the text. And Lady Macbeth was very much ignorant of the fact that why he's waving this kind of waves, and this particular wave which Macbeth weaves was actually engulfing both of them. So she could not understand why actually Macbeth was saying these kind of things. So she suggests, you lack the season of natures, so go to sleep. The scene finally comes to an end with Macbeth leading his wife off stage in search of comforting sleep. But calm and trouble-free rest is not to be enjoyed by either of them. And if you read the play thoroughly, you will see that none of them will be able to sleep peacefully ever again. Whereas Macbeth is suffering from insomnia and all the inner crisis, and Lady Macbeth was actually walking in her sleep, and she was uttering all the devastating crimes she has committed. So that's a very psychologically they are very much tormented, and this particular scene leads to the next part of the play. Okay, so in the banquet scene, Macbeth, overcome by his vision of Banquo's ghost, he is actually looking back to his earlier crime, the regicide, the killing of King Duncan. As a consequence, fear and disorder creep into his secure life. He was very much fearful. There was total disorder in his secured life. This is clearly symbolized by the banquet scene, where the formal ceremony of the opening, there was a formal ceremony of the coronation of the king, which can be contrasted with the disorder at the close. So the scene started with a formal ceremony but ended with a chaos. Okay. The scene of banquet is reminder of the earlier banquet at which Duncan was the guest in Macbeth's castle. The picture of royal contentment of the earlier scene is sharp contrast to the unnatural discomfort of this particular scene. So this banquet can also be contrasted and compared with the earlier banquet which was hosted by Macbeth, and in that banquet Duncan was his primary guest. In the opening sentence of this scene, Macbeth, as convention depicted on ceremonial occasion, says, "You know your own degrees, sit down." There is an ironic undertone to this speech. So we can find there are lots of irony in this speech. For while all the invited guests do indeed know their own degree, Macbeth knows his to be illegitimate. Macbeth knew that he was sitting on the throne which was not meant for him. So it's a kind of irony of the speech. So though the guests are then seated, Macbeth is on his feet for the whole scene, because Macbeth knew that particular throne is not meant for him. Okay. The empty seat at the banquet powerfully symbolizes Macbeth is not the legitimate king and is therefore unfit to preside at such occasions. So Though all the subjects were sitting, Macbeth could not sit on the throne. Macbeth could not sit on the host chair, and that was very much symbolic. So there are some strange ideas in Macbeth's mind also, that the thought of dead man will not haunt him like the memory of Duncan if the deed is done by some other hands. So, though he has killed Duncan by his own hands, in case of Banquo, he has used some kind of killer, professional killer. He has employed some killers. So, he employed professional killers to kill Banquo, but his crime confronts him in the apparition of Banquo, the ghost of Banquo, and the horror of the night of the first murder returns, because there also Macbeth and Lady Macbeth were very much panicked of killing Duncan, and that kind of panic returned in this case as well, though he had not committed the crime by his own hand. Okay, so the appearance of this supernatural figure is an echo of Lavater's theory. According to this theory, the guilty person frame to themselves out of their melancholy and their fear. For the very reason, Macbeth sees ghost of Banquo all alone. And the moment he sees the ghost, the the moment he sees the ghost, his guilty mind reflects in his words. Thou cannot say I did it, never say. As if he is directly addressing to the ghost of Banquo and say, you cannot say that I have done it, I have not done it. Okay, so his guilt-ridden conscience come out immediately after seeing the ghost. The response of Macbeth to the apparition, the ghost, understandably perplexes and further unsettle their hopes. As the ghost vanishes, the cry of Macbeth seems to be more full of horror. Okay, so Macbeth was very much horrified seeing that. On the other hand, Lady Macbeth's anger and frustrations with her husband comes because he thinks that he is imagining that the figure of Duncan is present and he has no knowledge of the killing of Banquo, and attacks Macbeth's behavior by composing it to the act of regicide. So, Lady Macbeth was thinking that Macbeth is remembering the killing of Duncan, and as if Macbeth was seeing the ghost of Duncan, not that the ghost of Banquo. So, in that way, she was trying to comfort Macbeth that there is nothing there and you should carry on with your kingship. Okay, so though Lady Macbeth tried to make a change, she could not affect the mind of Macbeth. And somehow Macbeth gains control of his passion immediately after some time, after seeing the ghost of Banquo some after time. He apologizes for his strange infirmity, and even once again he speaks of Banquo to is that he were present. I mean, Macbeth was a very solid character, and at once after seeing the Banquo's ghost for the first time, when it disappears, Macbeth in fact regains his composure, and he was mentioning that if Banquo were here, the program would have been much more successful. Okay, but there is something worse in the store for him when the ghost re-enters, and more terrifying than the earlier. Okay, and it looks like a rugged Russian bear or a hurricane tiger. Okay, these are the images which has been constructed to give a description of Banquo's ghost. So, just like Othello, Macbeth affirms his ability to meet any taste but this. Macbeth cries, "Avaunt and quit my sight." And here he also tells his wife that he cannot express his amazement at her ability to behold such sight and keep the natural ruby of her cheeks. So Macbeth did not know that Lady Macbeth could not see this ghost. Macbeth thought Lady Macbeth is actually showing some kind of composure despite looking at Banquo's ghost. But Lady Macbeth, like all the other person present in the banquet, could not see any ghost because the ghost was a kind of creation in the mind of the criminal. Here, in this case, Macbeth. And the other guests also realize that Macbeth is not addressing them but still have no clear idea of who or what causing the behavior. Unlike the first appearance of the ghost, there is no recovering in the situation after his second showing. When the curiosity of the guest spills over into interrogation, Lady Macbeth is quick to insist. She actually drives everyone away from the banquet and mm, uh, and requests everyone that go at once. Thus, the banquet that began so formally ends in chaos. So, in several ways, this particular banquet scene, makes the turning point of this play. Immediately after the scene, Macbeth goes to meet the witches. The torturing thoughts of guilt and concern that had rattled his soul previously give way to his self awareness, and all virtues of mercy, pity, and repentance abandon him. The central philosophical theme is also expressed through this scene as it shows how Macbeth fails to establish the order of which he has spoken earlier in this play. So Macbeth could not continue with the service of his wife as well. Uh, Slowly after this scene, we can see Lady Macbeth slowly taking the backstage, and he had only one appearance after this scene, the sleepwalking scene, and after that we came to know about that she has committed suicide. Okay, so and all the guilt, all the repentance, all everything was guiding Macbeth to revisit the witch and perhaps come to know about some solution to this problem. Why he was actually seeing the ghost, why his guilt ridden conscience was forbidding him to grow. Okay, so the ghost of Banquo has also some kind of symbolic meaning, which I have already told to some extent. It exposes the aspect of ordinary humanity in Macbeth. Here, the dead returns in a supernatural form to remind Macbeth that he cannot extinguish the human force within him. Macbeth is not someone who is like a god. Macbeth is a human being, and all these traits which he has exhibited by witnessing the uh, ghost of Banquo was very human-like, and he cannot go beyond those qualities. Here, the deliberate ambiguity continues to remain in Shakespeare's persuasion of the ghost. The way Shakespeare presented the ghost is very much deliberate. Cynically, the appearance is not a hallucination like the dagger of the earlier scene. We had the dagger scene where Lady Macbeth has witnessed the dagger who, with which Macbeth has killed King Duncan. So that was a hallucination, and this appearance is not like an hallucination. For the former was visible to the audience according to the folio text of Macbeth. Okay, but here this particular ghost of Banquo is only visible to Macbeth himself and not to any other person on the stage. Another important theme to which the banquet scene gives some kind of prominence is that the isolation versus companionship. Okay, So Duncan is seen in the limited encounter in the play. Duncan is never seen alone. He is always, even in his sleep, surrounded by loyal servants. But in contrast, Macbeth's isolation, even in the company of the other people, and the way he was unable to participate in life's feast is very much striking. So you can find some kind of comparison between Duncan and Macbeth as well. That is why Macbeth says, I have almost forgot the taste of fears. I have supped full of horrors. So he has actually suffered with the horrors. So with this discussion, I am sure you have understood the significance of the banquet scene and how it has propelled the plot forward towards its end. If you have any question, because this particular question regarding banquet scene is very pertinent for your university exams, so do read the scene carefully and please follow the lecture for your better understanding. Thank you.